Hi there, this is James here with another episode of Weekends Web App. This is day 0C, where we'll be working through our build tools and working through the Webpack compiler along with Typescript and getting that all up and running a bit nicer than we have it at the moment. If you'd like to follow along, if you've checked out the repo, you will also be able to check out this particular day by typing out git checkout day 0b, which was last day's. So if you do that, you'll have exactly the same code that we've got right now. Anyway, let's get into it. So where we left it yesterday, or rather the last day we streamed, was we were able to run gulp and we'd have a watch task and we'd have to run gulp dev, if I remember correctly. There we go. So that would get us the whole thing running, and that would then also run whenever any code changed. So if we go to app.ts, I'll change this hello world. Oh, maybe I didn't actually set up a watch for that. Let's double check that, hey? Ah, right, yes. So we never actually updated the watch task to cover Typescript. So let's just change that quickly and say what we should have been set up for. If I clear that. So now if I run app.ts and I change anything at all, it should pick up on that and run the script setting, which compiles it. You can see there it ran again, and every time things change, it will compile our new CSS or our TypeScript or our HTML or whatever. So it'll work through all of those and get them up and running. And alongside that, we also get a server, which is a localhost 8080, and that renders the most up-to-date version. You can see a little JavaScript running there, running that timer there. Right. So with all of that put together, what we're going to do is we're going to look at our TypeScript and that compiler a little bit more. Because unfortunately, what's set up there is potentially a little bit slow. It runs the whole compiler every time. And Webpack has this nice feature of incremental compilation, which means it only compiles as much as actually changed. And we want to probably make the most of that, while still keeping within gulp, kind of. And that's just because we need gulp to kick it off, but otherwise Webpack will actually be in charge of everything. And this will be a far more efficient build, which is why we sort of need to do it. So just to start off with, I guess, we'll take a look at the Webpack documentation, just to really hammer home what we'll be trying to make use of. So we're going to go into the API, the Node API. And the real critical part we're going to talk about is this compiler instance. So if we don't pass the Webpack runner a callback, and that's what usually happens with this code here, this Webpack stream code, what that does is that will end up essentially creating a callback, and it runs Webpack in its entirety every single time. Well, if we don't do that and just create a compiler instance, then we can manually do certain things, like we can call run on it, or we can call watch on it. And if we call watch on it, it will automatically take care of actually watching all the code to make sure that it updates as required, and it will do the minimum amount of work required, which is the real key part. We want it to do the minimum amount of work required, so each time there's only so much execution, and when the code gets really big, especially with TypeScript, this can mean the difference between a 10-second build rather than a 1-second build. And obviously when you're developing, if you're doing lots of little changes and little tweaks and you want to see the results of them in the code base, that incremental compile, like the 10-second delay can add up quite a lot as you're working through it. So it's important you want a quick compile so that you can keep on testing things, keep on observing things, and keep on working through whatever it is you're working through. your mechanics, your actual working on the code can keep up with your thoughts, because there's nothing more interminable than waiting around for the computer to do something that you already know is happening, that you're already thinking about the next step, but you just have to get stuck there waiting. So we don't want to do that, so that's what we're going to work through, this compiler and set instance concept. And what that's going to mean is we're going to essentially get rid of all of this gulp code and instead use Webpack more directly to arrive at what we want. And in order to make gulp behave nicely, we're going to use a callback. When we do that callback, what that'll basically mean is when we ask for this argument, this done argument, if we ever call that function like so, that will result in the task being considered done. So we're essentially going to use Webpack directly and just give it that callback at whichever point we need to get the job done properly. So anyway, let's launch into it. There's a couple of things we need to keep track of as well, because we're going to want to do something slightly different depending on whether we're watching or whether we're just compiling one time for, say, a build. So what we're going to do is work for the simplest case first, which is that build case. So let me set up a few things and then we'll go from there. So let me just check my code sample. That'll do it. Okay. So we want to have a standard config for Webpack. So what we're going to do is we're going to do that inside here. So we're going to go const webpack config. And we're essentially going to move all of this but we're going to have to actually give it the place where we want the files to go. Because unlike using gulp, where Webpack Stream sort of handles like the output component of all of this, instead we want to tell Webpack directly where we want to put things. So the output is still going to be app.js, but the path is going to be something else, which we'll have to resolve. So we're actually going to use Node's file API for that. And where is that? Well, that is going to resolve to this directory name, which is a standard Node thing. If we check the Node API dir name, we can see here that everywhere where we can, in every single module, if you access dir name, that'll give you access to essentially the current directory name of the current module. So that's just this JavaScript specifically. And we should be able to find the output where we need to from here. So it's the same place, plus, what are we looking for? Plus build/web. What else do we need? We want config.paths.buildweb. And then we're going to put it in that folder for now, but eventually we'll need to put it in some sort of assets folder, and we'll sort of demonstrate why, but we don't have to do that just yet. So I'm going to talk about it in a little bit. Otherwise, we need to configure an entry point. I'm going to make sure that how the configuration for that entry point goes. And that entry point will be the actual file, that Typescript entry file, which at the moment is app.ts, but we need to reference it. Okay. We need to reference it in this Webpack config instead. It's not quite all the way in this input. There we go. Okay, so this entry is going to be a string, because we only need to bundle one thing at the moment, and we might be able to get away with just going for config.paths.client source Then on top of that, we're going to go for app.ts. So that's our entry point. That's what Webpack is, we're expecting Webpack to compile. So now that we've got that Webpack config, what we're going to do is we're going to call Webpack. So we're going to make a Webpack compiler. And we're going to make that with the Webpack config. And we're going to see if we can get rid of all of this. And instead, we're going to run it. We're going to go webpack.run and then done. So this runs the compiler, actually runs the compilation step. Let me double check the documentation, make sure I haven't made a terrible mistake. Compiler instance, yep, run, and then callback. So we can just give that a try and we'll see what happens. So we'll close this out and go gulp scripts. Alright, Webpack run is not a function, and that's because I'm an idiot and I missed that. So we want to target the Webpack compiler and not just Webpack itself. Alright, let's try that again. So it finished after 8:09 seconds. It didn't actually output anything, so we'll need to dig in to actually get some reporting happening here. But what we can do is we can do gulp clean. What is the task? Gulp clean web, yep. Run gulp scripts. And let's just see if we had an output. So here we go, we've got build.web, we've got everything in there. So that is theoretically, that's working, that's a first step. It would be nice to get some of the information with the incremental build, but maybe we don't need to worry about that just yet. Right. So, in addition to that, we want probably some sort of stats information, and I'm gonna refer back to one of my older projects just to see if I can see some of what's going on after this finishes up. Yeah, okay. So what I've done in the past, what you get back from this function is you get error and stats. And what you can do inside this function is you can do something like this, and then go process.standardout.write stats to string. And this will give us a bunch of information about how this Webpack build went. So let's just give that a try. Nope. Ah, right. I miswrote my anonymous function. There we go. That should work. There we go. So now we actually get a bit of information about the actual build that happened. Might not be too useful, but we'll get more as time goes on. And it is kind of useful to see just what Webpack's been thinking, what bundles came out of it, and that kind of thing. So we can play with that reporting a bit more down the track. But what I really want to work through now is the watch component, because this still doesn't buy us any time. If we were to run gulp, gulp dev, my apologies. We'll set typo hour now. All right. So if we run it, okay, so scripts ran the first time, and now if we went to app.ts and change things, you can see it ran a little bit faster, I guess. Oh, even faster still. But it's still creating a new compiler instance every time, and it's likely not caching as much as we'd like it to. And we do need it to cache things, because if we depend on certain things, like let's say we go import, we're not really bringing in any dependencies yet, so it might not be the right time to introduce that kind of complexity. But I guess maybe the point is to say that, trust me, to a degree, this will get corrupted if we run it in this way, because we want Webpack to handle the watching. That incremental compiling is really important to us. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a really simple variable, and I'm just trying to keep things simple here. I'm not trying to be too clever or anything like that. We're just going to put in some variables here. We're going to have a watching variable for config. And what's going to happen is when we go into dev, we know that we're starting a config. Yeah, we know that we're going to need a sort of, what's the right way to say this? We know that we're going to need things set up in such a way that some might need to do something different based on whether they're watching or whether they're building. And this is sort of the difference as well between continuous integration, where you want to run the tests in your development scenario, and you want to run your tests when you've run a build and then you're letting the server figure out whether everything's good or not. There are different things that need to happen based on the scenario this task runner is run. So what we want to do is we want to set it up so that if we're watching, there are certain variables that are put in place that any task can look at and go, okay, so I know that I need to do something different here. So what we're going to do is we're going to take gulp.task. We're going to make a little task to set watch mode. And in fact, what we might do, is make a simple function that is our default function. This is the one that will mean that we won't have to run gulp dev anymore. We'll just use that. And then after it's run, it picks up gulp dev. It starts the dev function. So we're going to go change the config .watching to equal true. So that way anything that cares about it can just use that config object and say, all right, yeah, are we watching right now? And then use that information to do something different, whatever that something is. And this will mean, just to start off with, this will mean that we're able to run gulp. And you can see here that it kicks off. I mean, nothing's really changed too much because it's just as it was before. But now what we're going to do is we're going to remove the watch task from here, because what we want to do instead is handle the watching inside here. This gets where it gets a little tricky, and I'm certainly breaking out of the task and not doing things in a particularly standard way. But because this is tooling, I don't care as much about code quality. It'd be nice to have a really high quality tool system, but because the nature of it is you're always gluing stuff together, it's not quite as simple as that. And sometimes it's nice just to get it done, get it working, because you might have to come back to it when you need to work with the tools anyway. So anyway, let's carry on. What we're going to do is essentially create one Webpack compiler the first time this script's tasks runs. After that Webpack compiler is created, we'll use that for every subsequent run. So the first thing this task is going to do is check if a Webpack compiler exists. And if it doesn't exist, which is what that exclamation mark means, if not Webpack compiler, then we load up the config, we create the compiler, and then we do whatever is required of us at this next point here. So if it is if config.watching, do some watch thing here, else we're building, so now we can get away with just doing what we did before, because we're going to build once, oopsie daisy, and that's going to be it. So this should theoretically break unless we do gulp build. So if we do just gulp, you're going to see it didn't actually run Webpack because it slipped into the config watching side of things. But if we run gulp build, it ran everything, which is what we want if we ran gulp build. So what we're going to do now is we're going to figure out that watching section. And again, I'm going to refer back to some of my old compile notes, just because it can be easier than just stabbing away at the documentation. All right, so we only want to start this watcher once. So we're going to keep track of that as well. We've started Webpack Watcher. So the first time we go through here is the only time we go through here. After we've started Webpack Watcher, we're going to just leave well alone. So maybe we can make that really clear. We're going to early return if Webpack Watcher is already going. Next up, what we're going to do is we're going to start our watch. Yeah, we're going to start our watch if this happens. So, sorry, I'm not being super clear here. So, if we know that we haven't started the Webpack Watcher now what we need to do is we need to run webpack compiler.watch. So we need to actually get the watching process started and give it an appropriate callback so it knows what to do afterwards. Now, if we look back at this this API here, if we look back at this Webpack, the options here, there are a bunch of watch options available that allow you to change things like the amount of times it polls, how long it waits when it changes have happened. Like, does it wait for a couple of milliseconds after so it's not constantly throttling the watching and that kind of thing? We're just gonna leave the options alone to start off with though, because we don't really need to do anything in particular there to get a sort of a standard and decent behavior. But what we do need is a callback of some description that's going to tell us what actually happened. And it's going to look pretty similar to this callback here. Daisy. So we're just going to chuck that in here. I'm just going to do something naive here, see if this works, and then go from there. So that's what the Watcher is going to do. It's also going to say that we've started Webpack Watcher at this point. So every other time it goes through here, it just won't do it again. All right. So theoretically, this should work. So let's just give that a try, hey? All right, so it ran there. Took 841 milliseconds. Okay, let's go to app.ts, make a change. All right, task completion called, back told too many times. So what do I need to do here? Oh, of course. So it can only call, oops, my bad. It can only call this done function here once. So it's only allowed to do that once. Once it's done, then it needs to leave it alone. So what we can probably do is just here we need a, if we make a little this is again a little bit gross, but it'll do. So call done callback, and that's this one here. So if not called done callback, done. If we do that, it didn't even do anything because it didn't detect a change. What about now? There we go. Okay, and now you can see that's quite snappy. So you can see, oopsie daisy. Now you've got 16 milliseconds, very nice and quick recompilation time, and that'll be useful down the track. We don't get any live reload or anything like that, but to be honest with JavaScript, I don't necessarily want it live reloading on me. Unless I've got hot module replacement or something like that, I'm quite happy just to hit refresh when I want to refresh things. So that works for me. It suits me down to the ground. Alrighty. So once we've done that, yep. So now that we've done that, we've got ourselves a build tooling that sort of works for scripts. I mean, we could do a whole lot more, and in other projects, I've done a whole lot more to try and get it working with so that I can use the code for server-side rendering as well, but we don't need to cover that use case at all at the moment. So this packaging is kind of all right. we can do it. We can probably just do one thing, which is check how assets get loaded. So just make sure that we actually get dependencies in there too. So say if we have a dependency called dependency.ts, oopsie daisy, and we're just going to make something simple. We're just going to have it export a function, export a default function, send it a string, and that string should come back with a console log. So console log, you call the dependency plus name. I could do that with a template literal, but I'm not going to do that just right now. Okay, so if we do that, then we should be able to, in app.ts, we should be able to import default. So we'll just call it dependency func, and from slash dependency.ts, that should be an us, and we'll call it every single time it goes through here. Counter plus, we'll go atrocious typing. All right, here we go. So we should be able to call that function readily. And that's the thing. The import paths should not actually end with their file name. So we should be able to get away with just that. All right. Now, if we look down in the bottom right here, you will see that that dependencies was picked up on. Nice quick build times again. Now let's take a look at the app itself. And you can see our dependency is getting called there. Did we get source maps? Oh, nice. We got decent source maps too. That's really handy. So you can see here it actually recognizes where in the code that came from. It shows us JavaScript, but because it can give us an idea of where that code came from, it's actually quite nice in terms of debugging, because I can click right where that console log was, even end up there, and even click here and end up blocking it if we want to really see what's going on with the code. This is one thing that's very nice about web development these days, is the tools, especially for Chrome, which has far and away been leading the charge in terms of tool quality. Like it's just you've got astounding choice for really observing things, modifying them on runtime, getting really good profiling graphs and all that sort of thing. But anyway, that's another story for another time. We'll just let that code keep running, and we'll go from there. All right, so if we've got dependencies, we've got code running, I'm sort of happy with all that. I'll close the runner, and I think we'll stop there and make a commit, and then talk about what's next. Make ourselves a commit. So this is day 0C. Set up direct Webpack compiling with incremental watch. Cool. I'll push that on to the ether, and off we go. So now there's actually only one last thing I really want to think about, and to be honest, I haven't done it with a Connect server before, because I've usually moved on to a proper server by the time I get to this point. But since we're going to talk about it, we got to get set it up if we're meant to run things properly. This probably belies a little time in the README, just in some sort of text document. We'll just make a random text document. Text. There we go. Okay, so when you have a file structure, and this is going back to the website at the moment, so we have this app.js and we have app.css. Index.html references app.js and app.css. You will notice, however, we do not actually visit localhost 8080 index.html. We could. Oh wait, I've killed the runner. We could visit index.html and it would work just fine, because index.html is also this. And the reason for this is because websites, by default, if they're configured that way, and most are out of the box, they will automatically default to index.html if you go to like straight slash. And then what happens is you say go to anywhere else, like say application, and it will go, I can't get that. And this poses a little bit of a problem if you're running a fully progressive web app. And the reason for that is because eventually what we're going to be doing is we're going to be changing the structure of this using JavaScript. If I kill this absurd logging I've got running on, I'll demonstrate what I mean. Dependency func. Yeah, so I'll kill this logging. Just make it a blank function, doesn't even matter anymore. History.pushState. Okay, so when it comes to where you are in a web page, you'll notice any modern web app, you don't actually reload the page when you go from one spot to another. And the reason you don't reload the page is because the JavaScript is actually changing your address bar. So if we go history.pushState and we go to somewhere like app, wait, hang on. There we go. Huh? Maybe I've forgotten something about pushState. There are so many APIs, I always forget them. So let's jump straight over to pushState on MDN. And this is probably our first interaction with web APIs and MDN. Mozilla Developer Network, or MDN, is extremely good. Is an extremely good resource. It's pretty much the first go-to whenever you have any sort of problems with web APIs. It's the place to go. Here's what I misunderstood. Right, so we've got a state object, which I don't use too often, a label, and then what you'll actually set the URL to. So going back to here, let's go state object app and then slash app. Okay, and you can see that the JavaScript actually changed what this was, this address bar, and I could change that to anything. I could change it to foobar troswizzle if I wanted to, and it would work just fine. You can see here in the bar here that it's changed to exactly what I want. And that's really great because you can sort of do everything with JavaScript and people think that they're browsing to somewhere just naturally, like you would any normal page. The only problem with that is now if I hit refresh, nothing works. So when you run a web app, basically the root directory of where that web app comes from. So for some places it might be here, like some web apps, they might root from a directory like /app. What you need to happen is you need them to all serve that index.html by default. We want them all to mean index.html. So if we go to foobar troswizzle, we want it to actually serve us index.html. And the idea is eventually our JavaScript will deal with the fact that it's wrong. If it's a wrong route, or 404s is the terminology. If it's a not found page, we want the JavaScript to deal with it and not our index.html. So in order to do that, we need to talk to gulp connect, and see if we can do anything that's sort of like essentially fall back to index.html if you can't find something. So that's what we're going to look out for. So we'll jump into the gulp file and where our dev server is, because that's what we're going to need to change. So all we've got as our options is root and live reload. Okay, so we've got some various examples here that possibly don't help us too much. Let's have a look through all of these options and see if there's anything that sticks out to mind. The middleware could potentially be the trick. Yeah, so the middleware will let us do something, I guess, with what Connect is doing, and maybe that's the best way to do it. Let me just read up a bit more about the Connect server. Yeah, let's use a middleware to try and sort this out. So I'm not sure how often this function runs, whether it runs every single time or whether this function runs only once and then returns the middleware. So let's check that out first. We'll just return no middleware to start off with and see what a console log will let us know about Connect and options in general. And we'll clear this. So we'll run gulp dev server and we'll just see what it has to say for itself. So yeah, that is the Connect app. Potentially fallback could be useful to us. Fallback file. Default is undefined. Okay, excellent. Yep. So we don't even need to write a middleware because didn't notice it before. But that should be enough. So let's see if having index.html is a fallback. We could certainly do more stringent error handling eventually, but this will do the trick for now. So let's run the gulp dev server. That is probably not okay. So yeah, we've got a not found, which means we possibly need to do more to actually fix up this fallback. I'll look at the Connect options and go from there, hey? The alternative as well is we can actually jump into the code to actually check out what that fallback is meant to mean. I would have thought it would have been an option with Connect, but we never know. Right. Where is your documentation? GitHub node connect. So I think we need to jump all the way over to the middleware layer for node and then go from there. So we're just going to search and see if the word fallback is in there anywhere as an option. Nope, no good. All right. Let's find out more about gulp connect then. This is unfortunately part of the deal if you're working with the JavaScript ecosystem. Is they're not always as stringently documented as you'd like, and we do need to sort of look around and see what's going on. Fallback test, dir name, fixtures. Okay, so I think we have to reference the file directly, which is what is missing here. So it can't be just a relative thing. But we can handle that. If we copy from our path resolve down this way. And make our fallback. So it's going to be this plus. Does build web end with a slash? No, it doesn't. Right, so then it's slash index.html. Right, so let's give that a try. There we go. Okay, so now pretty much anything should serve up the web app, unless, of course, we access, say, the CSS. So yeah, app.css. I should have known that. All right, app.css. You can see here it serves up the CSS, and app.js serves up the JS. But other than that, everything else will serve the app, and that's essentially what we want. We want that to happen so that the web app that we write can be responsible for all. It's called routing. What it's called in terms of what page it should actually show on a particular URL route. So we're going to make the web app responsible for that, and this makes it easy to do that because we know that we will get index HTML literally wherever we visit. And what that could mean is that on certain pages it goes, sorry, 404, and on some pages it goes, all right, this is the right route, so we'll show you this page or another page or whatever view it needs to be in that route. But we'll get more into the details of that in a little while. Now, that's good. That's good. So we can add ourselves a little bit more progress. So let's put that in. Make ourselves a little commit. I'm a big fan of little commits, of little bits of progress. Some might not like so many commits, but yeah, I'm a fan, and I don't mind it. It makes it easy to digest down all the different changes that have happened over a period of time. So if I get a win, I'm going to record it. All right, so that gives us gulp dev server updated to fallback to index.html on 404s, which is the code for not finding something. So with 20 minutes left in the tank, we're actually pretty good. This will give us enough time to do a bit of cleanup of the code that's around, and then give us somewhere to work from. To start, I think, day one. Next time we hit the stream. So there are a couple of things I want to do. So with these paths, I want to be able to let's kill that. I don't want it. All right. So with these paths, I probably want a folder that assets will go into, rather than an app being at the root. And what will eventually happen is we might serve them off a CDN or something like that. But I'm actually quite happy to keep them on with the application itself, because eventually we'll make this app offline capable. And what that will mean is that in addition to the files just being of a relatively easy size to download every single time, even if they had to, there will be some sort of service worker that sits behind it, will make sure that the user pretty much doesn't have to constantly get these files. So they'll download the app once, and the rest of the time it'll be in their cache. So they don't really need a speedy response per se. And if we ever have scaling issues, well, we can deal with that problem when we get to it, rather than imagining it as a problem we need to deal with now. So if we want that assets folder, we've got that build web, and then we've got build web assets, let's say. And we're going to put them in assets. Yeah, /assets. That said though, no, that'll do. Yep. So we'll do that, build web assets. We'll just make that path there. And what we'll do is put anything that needs to go in build web. So any JavaScript or any less will go into that folder. The index.html will not follow that path, so we'll leave that for now. Now, if I run the gulp task, unfortunately, we will have something missing here. The JavaScript and the CSS is no longer located. So you can see here, because index.pug references app.css and app.js, they're not in the right place anymore. Now, just to start off, just to deal with it, just to get some sort of skeleton up that's working, I'm just going to do it like this. Eventually, we will use variables and we'll have to pass them through so that if, for instance, this was behind a CDN and we had like some kind of variable like a static asset path plus app CSS, that could handling something like cdn.weekendswebapp.com, something like that. But for the moment, we're just going to hard code it in so that we've got /assets app.css. So if we've done that, live reload picked it up and we're already there. So we've got now ticking up, and that's all tickety-boo. That's what we wanted. Now, in addition to that, let's just do some general cleaning and organize all our various code and stuff like that. It's a bit weird that I put all the main runners and drivers up here. So maybe let's, before we have an explosion of complication and all that sort of thing, because we've got a little bit of time available to us, let's make ourselves a folder for all this build stuff and make it work a little bit differently. So if we say have a directory called, I don't know, I don't want to call it build. No, build tool. Build tools is fine. Build tasks. Yeah, there we go. Build tasks we'll call. So we've got this folder called build tasks, and that's going to be the one that actually handles sort of everything. And we'll break it up into little bits and pieces just so that it's easier for us to work with down the track. So we'll pull them out one at a time. So we've got build tasks styles.js. Let's start with that. So what's the task we need? We need this one here, gulp.task.styles. And that's going to need config available to us. So we probably need to think about that. So let's handle that. We'll go build tasks config.js and exports equals all of this. So now config equals require build tasks config. So that'll get us our config now. And we also need styles to get a hold of it. We'll do exactly the same thing, except it's on the same directory as this one, so we don't need the build tasks in there. We also need to get all of the things that are used by this styles task. So we've got less, and we've got connect, and we've got gulp. All right, so let's verify that that all still works. So all we need to do is we also need to require build task styles somewhere up here. And that should be sufficient to get us something working here. No, can't find it. Oh, I did not save. All right, how about now? Okay, so we all good. We split up, and you can see that our styles did run, did finish, all that sort of thing. All right, so next up, scripts.js. So this is for JavaScript. Arguably the largest section. Plenty in here, so let's pull over. We definitely know we need to pull over config. What else do we need? Well, we don't actually need Webpack stream anymore, so we can remove that. We still need, we don't need del, but we do need, for here we need Webpack and we need gulp, and I believe we need path as well. arguably should be enough, but we will of course test it. And she ran just fine, good stuff. Alright, the rest of this, so I'll do containers, but then I'll leave the rest of this at the root, because I don't feel like I need to put everything into build task just because I said so. Alright, so we'll put in containers.js. The reality is that it probably won't get much bigger than what it is, but I'm not too bothered by separating it out. Again, we split things out, so we need gulp, we know that. We need pug. We need connect. And we need config. Hey, there we go. We need to delete containers from here. And that leaves us with a working file. Gulp. Nope. All right, it's not bring it in. Sweet. Okay. Okay. So what can we do now to clean things up? We can remove a few of these. So we don't need gulp pug here, we don't need gulp less. We still need path resolve for the dev server. Good-o. Okay, so now that we've reduced that down, the gulp file is, I mean, it's potentially a little bit easier to pass. Just because of how hacky these things can eventually get, I kind of like to keep them separate, because otherwise what tends to happen is you end up with this big old soup config file. It eventually ends up to around 500 to 1,000 lines, and no one knows what the hell it does anymore. So we're going to try and cut that off at the head by just pulling things apart a little bit while we've got this time. All right, so the next bit of cleanup we can do is probably remove code samples. We don't need them anymore. They don't actually help us. So we'll keep index.pug, but we'll empty it out. We'll reference app.js and app.css, but app.ts we will empty out entirely. Bit of dry humor, that's a very simple to do. We'll knock that off in no time. We'll do the same with app.less. No humor this time. And what we'll do, get back to the file system, and we'll clean out some things that we don't need. So we don't need dependency less or dependency.ts. Cool. Huh. Where is my assets.js? Maybe it doesn't do it when it's empty. Let's test that. Console.log. I know I'm not running the build tool, but I thought it would still be around. I just got to make sure that my compiling is still happening. Nope. Okay, we've got to deal with that then. Yeah, let's deal with that. So let's check our scripts.js. Dir name is a problem here. One, however, that is easily solved with that, because the directory is now different, so we've got to compensate for that and do that. So it would have gone off to some mystery place. We'll probably find it. We'll find it here now. Where would it have gone before? It would have ended up in client, in build tasks, build web. There we go. That's where that ended up. So just clean that out and we're good. Okie dokie. So what I think we'll do is we've only got 5 minutes left. So we're going to clean out the package.json. We do not need Webpack stream anymore. We want to fix all of these versions because I don't actually trust that things will behave as they're intended to. We do not need the pug CLI anymore. We still use gulp pug. We still use gulp less. We're using gulp connect. We're using gulp and we're using del. Alright, we've got this old build script up here. We're going to make build. See daisy. We're going to build. We're going to make that gulp build. And we're going to make npm run dev be our standard dev server. We'll make that gulp. Just gulp. We have no tests, and this description is a little off. So we're going to change this description. It would have just grabbed from the README. We're just going to change this description to be web app from a stream where we build the lot live. That'll do. Okay, I'm going to change the version number because it ain't ready, not even close. Everything else should be all right. What else can we do? We can slap the license on this baby. So chooselicense.com. So we want an open source license for this. I want to maintain my copyright, but otherwise people can do whatever they want with the code. So here we go. Our license is MIT. The year is 2018. Full name, James Rakich. And we are done with the license. Okay. If we missed anything else, I'll just run those gulp tasks. I don't need that extra window anymore. Clear this. Alright, so we'll do npm run build. And that should be able to run through the entire build and then exit out, which it did. Very good. And npm run dev. That also seems to be working. Ah, that's right. I blanked it out, didn't I? My bad. Very good. Okay, so we are pretty much good to go with about 2 minutes to spare. So forgive me for ending the stream early, but I think this will just about do it for now. I will make a commit and then we'll log her off. And maybe we'll talk briefly about what's going to be coming next. So git add dot get status. That's got everything. Good-o. Tidy and clean up before launching into day 1. Day 0C. And what do we do for that? We separate build tasks into separate files. Remove temporary demonstration code. Add a license, and clean up package.json. All right, so up that goes, and we are good to go. So what's going to be coming next is we're going to be working through our web app. we're going to sort of pick up the pace and actually start writing code that can be construed as some degree of interactive. We're going to start by working through all of our platform layer stuff, and platform layer is a term I sort of stole from the handmade hero fella, Casey Muratori. What the platform layer is going to be is essentially the code that sits between us, our code, and the web APIs. Because while we could use web APIs directly everywhere, and we certainly will need to do that for DOM elements, which are the little parts of the HTML documents that we can interact with, there's a lot that we won't want that to happen. We'll want to be able to call some sort of code that we can control. So if ever anything changes underneath us or our dependencies change, we're still safe. Our code is still good, so to speak. We can depend on it. So we'll be working through that platform layer and sort of dealing with all the basics that a web app needs, like routing and translation and date time and all that sort of stuff. But anyway, I've said too much. We'll be saying much more on it when we get to day one, next time we hit the stream, which will be next Tuesday at 8 p.m. Anyway, thanks for watching. Hope you've enjoyed thus far. We're going to be picking up the pace, and I will promise to be explaining lots more of my code as we go, because I know there are some things that I've probably skipped right over for those of you who are raw beginners. But we will attempt to be covering over these things many, many times. So, yeah, do stick with it if you're a little lost with all the tooling. Anyway, thanks for watching. See you next time.